and I am here to talk to you about writing a winning resume. So before we get started, I want to ask you, what do you think a resume is and why do you need one? Yes, yes, please.
A resume is a piece of paper or something with information on what you've done for employers to see who you are, to sum you up.
Okay, it shows what you've done, who you are, sums you up. Great answer. Anybody else? Yes.
Yeah, I also feel like something's kind of
It showcases your skills and experience, absolutely. And then why do we need one? Why do we have to have a resume? Yes?
to get a job.
To get a job, to get the interview. It's because just having a resume doesn't mean you get a job. It means it gets you the opportunity to be interviewed. But a resume can also be used for graduate school applications, scholarship applications. There are multiple uses for it, but it is a document that's designed to move you a step further towards something that you're looking for. So it's not just, I'm going to use this resume to hopefully get an interview, to get a job, but you can use it in multiple situations. So that's what today we're going to talk about all the things that need to be in there. And one of the things I always say is the first question you should ask before you start writing a resume is, who is my audience? Because very often these days, that audience, the first person to look at your resume isn't even a person. It's many companies and organizations are now using what they call applicant tracking systems, ATSs, and they are scanning, those systems are scanning for keywords. So if it says must know PowerPoint and Excel, and you didn't put that on your resume, you may not be screened in. Ultimately, a human will look at your resume, but remember, it's important to think, who is your audience? If it is a human being looking at it at first, it's usually a human resources professional who may be looking at 60, 70, 80 resumes per job opening. So you have to grab her attention or his attention very quickly. In fact, this was a couple years ago, and it was probably during the recession in maybe 08, 09. The Delta Airlines was hiring a bunch of flight attendants. Their applicant tracking system got so jammed with applications that it would shut down like every 20 minutes. And so many people applied for, I think it was 200 jobs, that they said statistically it was easier to get into Harvard than it was, by the numbers of applications, than it was to be a flight attendant for Delta Airlines. So that's how important it is to stand out. We're hiring in our office right now, and the range of applications for job opening, there's probably like 30 to 50, depending on the job in our office. So you do have a lot of competition. So we're going to talk about the ways to make you stand out. And that's the end in mind. Always, how can I stand out from everybody else? The first thing that you want to do on your resume is utilize words and showcase skills that every employer wants. Every year, the National Association of Colleges and Employers does a survey of organizations and says, what's really important to you? And here you can see the top 10 skills that every employer is looking for. On that list, what do you think is the most important one? And it turns out to be the perennial favorite. Every year that I've been doing this, it's the #1 skill. Which one of those skills do you think it is? Initiative is a great answer. I want to work with people, but it's not the first. It's not the #1. If I had a prize, I would give it to you. It's communication. #1 skill every employer wants. Now, if you are English majors or film and media studies majors, communication should be one of your gifts that you have. So showcase that on your resume. So I even say, and many times students will work in retail or restaurants, use the word communicate with customers to describe the specials of the day or something like that. Use this word on your resume somehow because it's a #1 skill. And the rest of these we can usually showcase either through class projects that you've done, papers that you've written, or even skill jobs or in organizations. So these are really the kinds of skills employers are looking for. Let's make sure we showcase those on the resume. In fact, we have job fairs. Has anybody ever gone to one of our job fairs? We'll have them in the spring, and on February 9th and 10th, we're going to have our spring one. When I'm driving these employers back and forth from the MU to their vehicles, I always say, what are the things you're looking for most out of anything? And they say major is not that important. They are looking for students who have completed an internship, who have a good GPA, and that can communicate effectively about who they are and what they're looking for. So those are the things. If I were to give advice, I would say get good grades and have at least one internship opportunity, paid or unpaid. It really will make a difference on your resume. Okay, so we're going to start with what a resume must have on it. And some of these things will seem like common sense, but to this day, I will see resumes where people forget to put their name, or they forget to put a phone number. And you're going to say, why is she telling us this? But I see it every day. I see a lot of times people won't put addresses on there. The first thing on your resume, and you will see the resume sample that I've given you, that a Sun A Devil, is the contact information. This would be your name, your address, your telephone number, and an email address. And sometimes now, if you'd like, you could put a LinkedIn, or if you're a creative and you have a portfolio out there, you could put something out there so that they could link and go look at your portfolio or look at your LinkedIn account, where you can also upload documents and showcase your skills there as well. What if you are here at school and you are from Montana? What if you have a permanent address and a school address? Which one should you put on there? I always say put the one that you are currently receiving mail at. Probably no one gets any mail anymore, but it should be the one where you're currently residing. Don't put 2 or 3 addresses. It confuses an employer.
So it's possible to go overboard as far as your contact info goes?
Yes. Don't put cell phone, office phone, no. And you probably all have 2 or 3 email addresses. Put the one that you actually look at the most. So now, let's pretend you are from Montana, and when you graduate or when you want an internship, you want to move back. Then I say, go ahead and put that address on there, because if an employer is in Montana and they see that you're from Montana, it's easier to hire you than it is to hire somebody who's in Tempe, Arizona. Yes?
Can you explain a little bit more about what should that email address look like?
Yes, definitely. Your email address should be one that is professional. You may have, avoid loves to party, or, you see that AOL, any of those kinds of things. And I have to tell you a story about my son, because this is a true story and we didn't even think about it. His last name is Wiener. Mine is Fachman. I kept my own name. So not because of that, but so his name is Andrew Michael Wiener. And when he came to ASU, they gave him, his email was amwiener@asu.edu. So in our Sun Devil Career Link system, somebody pulled his resume out and came into me and said, look at this guy's email address. And I said, oh, that would be my son. And I didn't even think about it, because that's his name, Andrew Michael Wiener. But he definitely changed it, because it could have a negative effect on an employer looking at it. Even though that is his last name, it wasn't getting him good results. So think about the email that you put on here, and also have it be one that you look at. Don't have it be I have a Gmail account. I hardly ever go to it, which I need to, but I don't look at that very much. So put the one that you look at. The other thing I would say about your contact information, have someone call the number. Notice I didn't say dial. Have someone call the number on your resume. The reason I say that is because on my own resume, I had transposed 2 numbers. No one was ever going to call me to set up an interview, because they could not. And believe me, if you've got 80 people looking for jobs, You're not going to try to search out, oh, let's figure out that person's phone number. Not going to do it. So have someone actually call that number, and then also listen to the message on your cell phone. If I dialed your phone number, oops, I said it. If I called your phone number right now, what is the message I would hear? Is it professional? Make sure it is. And get rid of those annoying, are they called ringbacks? Or you're listening to music. Nobody wants to do that. They're busy professionals wanting to contact you. If you want to move, and I've done this with a couple students, let's say you live here, I had a student that wanted to move to Denver and was submitting application after application and not getting any results. And I said, under your contact information, why not put willing to relocate at personal expense? She started getting phone interviews. So if you are living here and you want to move to Boston or North Dakota or wherever it might be, that is something you might consider doing. I also say if you know someone in that area and you can use their address, that's not a bad idea too. Because some companies do relocate students, but at entry-level positions, that would be kind of rare. At new college grad, that would be pretty rare. Any other questions about contact information? Okay, we're gonna move on to the next part. The next thing on your resume, and you will also see that on this, is a summary. A couple years back, when we used to call them objectives, and objectives are gone. We now have a summary on here, and it's very short, and in 1 or 2 sentences, you say who you are and what you want to do. Remember, employers want you to articulate that. So this one, here's an example here, but the other thing about that is whatever you say you are and what you want to do, there should be evidence of that in the rest of your resume. You shouldn't say, you know, brilliant English major wants to be a rocket scientist, and then you haven't done any rocket science. You have to back that up. So the best way to do a summary statement is to write down what you think your 2 greatest strengths are. So why don't you all write those down? If someone said, what are your 2 greatest strengths, what would they be? And then the next thing you want to write down is what kind of an opportunity are you looking for? Now, it doesn't have to be, I want to be a film editor. It could be as broad as I want to do something, an internship in the film industry or in the publishing field, something like that. And then you've got there's your summary statement. You said 2 things about yourself and what you want. Did everybody write down what they're thinking they would like to do? And then let's see if we can make a craft one. This one says new college grad, professional position in publishing field, using what? Strong communication and editing skills. This person is a motivated biotech major with lab experience. They want to use their research, analytical, and teamwork skills. And those were probably some of the top 10 skills. So does anybody want to share what their summary might look like? No. Don't be shy. But do you see how you can pretty much make it by coming up with, here's 2 things about me, and here's what I want to do. Don't make this really, really long. Don't have it be a paragraph. Don't use I statements. I'm a brilliant English major. None of that. Just go right into it. Oh, yes.
Is this something that should be customized for every job you're handing your resume to?
Very good question. Should this be customized? I think it should be. In fact, I think to get results these days, you should pretty much tailor your resume every time you apply for a specific job. Now, all of you will be uploading your resume into big Sun Devil Career Link, big job boards. I would avoid some of the larger job boards, but I would say Sun Devil Career Link. So you're going to have one generic one sort of, but yes, every time you can tailor your resume, your cover letter, it will give you a greater chance of getting that job or getting that interview, I should say. So yes, these could be tailored. So you might have one that focuses on your writing skills. You might have one that focuses on your analytical skills. If you're applying for law school, again, it depends. Good, very good question. Any other questions about summary? Okay. The next piece of your resume will be your education. As new or soon-to-be college graduates, this is really your most marketable piece that you offer to employers. And in fact, if I looked at 90% of the jobs I look at, I always say, look at the qualifications and also required. Must have bachelor's degree. Since that's the very first thing, you want to make sure it's in the upper part of your resume. Anything that they mention in their qualifications, think about putting that at the top of your resume. The engineering school hired the global recruiter for American Express as one of their career people. And I love when she does resume workshops because she always says, if you fold your resume in half, will this get you an interview, the top part? So it's very important to pay attention to what the job requirements are, because it may look different depending on what kind of position you're applying for. So education, and okay, this one happens to say global studies, but you need to put your Bachelor of Arts. You need to say when you're graduating. Many employers come here and recruit, and they do key off your graduation date. So it could be December 14, May 2015, it could be 2018, whenever it is. You want to make sure that you've got that on there, because then they know, are you ready for a professional job or are you looking for an internship? You also want to put the university, of course. And then if you have a good GPA, put that on there. Employers tend to believe, remember I said the good grades at the beginning, and I think they're true, or they're right about this, if you are good in school, you will be good at work. Is there a correlation? I'm sure there is. People that perform well in one setting, in an educational setting, will probably perform well in a workplace setting. So if you have a good GPA, you should put that on there. So what's a good GPA? I would say 3.0 and above. And don't think your life is over if you have a 2.9, because it may only matter one time. I mean, no one ever asked me what my GPA was. I couldn't even tell you what my GPA was in college. So, but if you have one that's stellar, put it on there, because it is a marketing tool for you. It makes you look better. It makes you stand out. Remember, that's what we want to do.
So I'm going to throw a hypothetical into the mix. What if you're working with a student talking about doing a resume, and maybe he or she didn't do so well in the beginning, the last 2 years were really good. Typically, many grad schools will require you just to, well, they'll want your cumulative GPA, but they'll also want your GPA for the last 16 hours. Can you do something like that?
I would do it with, some people have done this, they put major GPA. So sometimes people do outstanding in their major and not so good in the gen ed biology that they got a D in, or they barely survived with a C, whatever it might be. So I would say you could do that. But for grad school, I would say you could do the 60 credit hours for a job, no. But you could put your major GPA. Does that make sense? Okay. Another thing about education, avoid putting high school. High school's gone. You're not going to put the high school on there. Some students have gone 2 years to a community college, and I say you don't need to put that on there. Employers don't necessarily care about the path you took to get to this bachelor degree. They just want to know that you're going to have one. So in the sake, remember, you got to put a lot of good stuff up in this top area. You don't necessarily need to put those things. Somebody told me that if they went to Brophy, does anybody know Brophy, or any of you they said, oh, having that on my resume will get me the results. So if you know that's good for your audience, it could be bad for some. What if, my kid played lacrosse, we hated Brophy. So that might not work for you. Who is your audience? You have to think about that. So any other questions about education? What if you have certificates? Definitely put them on there. Certificate in professional writing, certificate in international business. There's so many certificate programs, I can't even think of them all. This would be a really good place to put that. So certificates. And then the next thing, and I don't think I have it on here, no I don't, but it is on this resume, honors and awards. Because those are mainly attached to your educational experience, you'll want to put that there. So if you're a presidential scholar or an Obama scholar, or you received, okay, this one was a provost scholar, you're going to want to put that on here. Remember, employers will say past success predicts future success. So that's why you would put those things on there. Yes.
So you were saying like it doesn't really matter about putting like community college on there, but what about this like certificate or degrees you might have gotten? Where do you like just put that in?
If you had an AA degree from Chandler Gilbert or Scottsdale, again, you don't have to, you can put it on there, but that doesn't matter to the employer. They want to know you have the bachelor's degree. So that path you took, so you wouldn't put them on there at all. If you got a certificate in, I don't know, quality management, you could put it there from a community college. Did that answer your question? Okay, all right. So the next part of your resume, you're going to see, go ahead.
I'm sorry,
Yes?
but I mean, if it's a certificate, especially that is going to serve a purpose for the job you're applying to, even if it's something earlier, that would be worthwhile, because then you're showing it a concentration of coursework
Mm-hmm.
in a particular area that's relevant to the job.
Right. If it, you know, if it's not relevant to the job, because this is a marketing tool, you want to put the things the employer wants. You don't have to put everything that you have. Now this next part, and you don't see it on here, but you do see internship. So before we go into this, if you do an internship, put that, remember, we want that up at the very top part. Why? Because employers have said, if they said, we would rather see your skills up at the top, then I'd say put the skills up at the top. If they say we like to see students with high GPAs, internships, and communication skills. So if you've done an internship, that would go up here. And it would say where it was, how long it was, and then 3 to 5 accomplishment statements about that. We'll talk more about the accomplishment statements. If you haven't done an internship, and many students do not, one of the best things you can put on there are any course projects you've done, any research or a thesis that you've done. And these are 5 words you want to write down, and this is why course projects are so important. It shows that you did some research, you conducted a literature review, or you went out and did human subject research, whatever kind it might have been. So you can do research, you can analyze data. So research, analysis, usually you're doing this on a team, so teamwork is important. Then you probably wrote up the results and maybe you presented it as a class project in front of other group members. Those are 5 really highly valuable skills. And when you see the 2 projects on here, you will probably see those words in here. So let's say in English as a major, you don't do any group projects. Would that be true? Pretty much?
Pretty much.
Okay.
Depending on the concentration.
Then you're going to probably want to focus in on any papers that you've written. And hopefully it would demonstrate something that maybe might be of interest to that employer. Employers of new college graduates, this is often what they're going to say, tell me more about that class project you did, or what is a project you did in school that you're most proud of and why? So keep everything you're doing, because at some point you may be asked about that. So that's the course projects. Any questions about that? Anybody going to write a thesis for graduation? If you did, you might want to put it on here and say what kind of research you did to do that thesis and who you presented it to. Okay. And then the next part of your resume, and notice on this one, it's on the bottom half, but that doesn't mean it's not important. Experience can be paid or unpaid, but if you're going to use an unpaid experience, then you probably need to have done it for a while. Don't just say, well, I was a volunteer at PF Chang Marathon and call that experience. That would be more community involvement. But most students I know either work retail or restaurant. Probably some of you are doing that too. They're very valuable skills you get from that. So you'll notice here, this person is a barista at Starbucks. And notice the first word, remember I said, if you want to, you got to get this word in somewhere. Communicate with up to 300 customers, ordered supplies. Now, the other thing is, you'll notice that these are not a laundry list of duties, because some students will say they took the orders, made the coffee drinks, ran the cash register, cleaned the bathrooms. Those are job duties. Instead, you want to make what we call accomplishment statements that actually show, I did this, and here was the result, or the accomplishment, or the purpose. So think about results, purpose, accomplishment. So why are they communicating? Well, this just shows accomplishment of doing a lot of work with a lot of people in a very fast-paced environment. This next one says, I ordered supplies. Well, why? To maintain stock levels. So if Starbucks runs out of coffee cups, they're in trouble, right? So this is why you would do that. And okay, so this one, problem solving, notice they saw that list, and talks a little bit about their skills, and then develop customer loyal base. How? So how did you accomplish that? By cultivating strong client relationships. So are any of you working right now? Great. Can you tell us what you're doing, and let's try to write an accomplishment statement for your job.
Okay, well, I'm a bartender, so I guess keeping conversations flowing.
And why?
a lot of
See,
those
that's
problem
absolutely.
solving.
Okay, so communicate with customers. Why? To create a welcoming environment, or to encourage guest satisfaction, or you establish relationships with customers. Why? Through communication. To promote brand loyalty. I'm just trying to give you some ideas of why you're doing that, because we can go to 100 bars. Why are we going to come to your bar? Or however many bars there are. Why? Because they like you, right? So show how, okay, so what are some other things you do? So you're talking to the customers. You probably have to do some other things.
Well, stocking, is another thing. Keeping order.
Okay, but okay, when you say keeping order.
Handling money, obviously.
Okay. So you could say process financial transactions, because it's more than just handling money. And you hopefully are doing that efficiently and accurately. So how many, you could probably have three bullets about that, and focus on the things that you know are important to all employers, the communication. You probably work as a team. Team is very important. Every single organization has customers. ASU are our customers. If you don't come here, we don't have jobs. So, we need to keep you happy. So customer service is number one in pretty much any organization I can think of.
Well, I'm a solo bartender. I'm the only one handling it. So could I say something like showing initiative, or essentially managing while I'm there?
Yes, so I would talk about your volume, because that really is a hard thing to do. Multitasking, time management. So yeah, that's a tough job. So if you want to, a lot of times you'll read in how to write a resume, they'll say, put numerical values on everything. Well, that's hard to do for some jobs. For yours, it is. Like I can't say 90% of the students that come and talk to me get jobs. I hope they do, but I don't know that, so how do I quantify my job? But you certainly can. And that looks impressive. Like, wow, you can handle a lot. That's really good. Yes.
Does it make a difference to employers in terms of how long you work? Does a resume with someone who worked 3 jobs in 3 years look different than someone who worked 1 job for 3 years?
Very good question. I would say it depends. The employer might ask you about that. Wow, it kind of looks like you're a job hopper. What's going on there? Now, with an internship, they would know, well, it's usually just a defined set of time. So the fact that you were there for 3 months or the summer or whatever, that would not look unusual. But employers hate turnover. They think you're going to come and work for them forever, which is not true. In fact, I just went through some training here. The average tenure of an ASU staff is like 2 to 4 years, which shocked me. I mean, I thought people came here and never left. But even at ASU, people aren't staying that long. So they're not going to expect, and especially as new college grads, you won't have 10 years of experience. but be prepared to say something about that because they could ask you, wow, you've had 3 jobs in 3 years, what's going on there? Or 3 jobs in 6 months, what's going on? That would be, and remember, you don't have to put every job on your resume. It's a marketing tool. It is not a work history. Now a resume is not a legal document. If they ask you to fill out an application later, then you put all of those jobs because that is a legal document. But a resume is a marketing tool. So you don't, if you were somewhere for 2 weeks and hated it and quit, then don't put that on your resume.
So would you advocate more for like a functional resume?
Never,
Opposed to, no, okay.
never, no.
So what about like chronologically, I mean, not like a strict chronology. So
I
people
am.
would take like a chronological resume is everything that you would do in sequence.
Okay, yeah. And I would say, no, you get to pick and choose a resume is a marketing tool. I'm not gonna put that I detasseled corn in Iowa on my resume, even though I did, because I don't need to do that, right? Or I'm not looking to do that. Maybe I'd put that on there and I say the chronological resumes give the dates because notice, employers, you've seen it on applications, required, must have 2 years experience. If you just put 2010 to 2013, they don't know how much time that really is. That's why you have to put it like this. So yes, how many jobs? Now in the professional world, they say you need to go back at least, or 10 years is enough to go back. So I wouldn't even have to put all the jobs I've had on there. But you probably don't have 10 years of work experience. So you can put as many jobs. If you are looking like a job hopper, then you could say, well, I don't need to put that 2-month job. As college students, employers don't look at gaps in employment as much as they do with adults because they figure, oh, you had a really rough semester and you quit your job to focus on your studies. So that kind of makes sense. Okay, any other questions about experience? Let's say you were a volunteer at Animal Humane for 3 years. That to me would be valid work experience here. Sometimes I work with returning moms who have stayed at home and they were volunteers at their kids' school for 7 years and now they're back in college. That's to me, it would be, the job title would be volunteer, but it would be at that school and you would have those accomplishment statements. So don't think it has to be paid to be experience. Okay, now this says, depending on your resume, these would be optional. I think most of these are not. I'm going to change that word the next time. I think these are important items to have on your resume. And the first one is community involvement. Now you'll see this down here at the bottom of here underneath the skills. Remember when I said you want to stand out? Just think about it. If you're all English majors and you're all graduating on the same date and you've all taken similar courses, how can you stand out? You can stand out by your community involvement. And I have had more than one student come back and say, I put that I was a member of, I'll use Animal Humane. I put that I was in Animal Humane and the HR person that hired me happened to have 4 rescue dogs. These things really do happen. So put them on here. Plus, all successful people give back to their communities. So start doing that now. And community involvement can be student clubs and organizations. It can be local organizations. You could be involved with, did anybody do that Stuff the Backpack thing on, I don't know, they did Stuff the Backpack for United Way. What else could this be? What do we have on here? Oh, just nonprofit organizations or the student clubs. Those are kind of maybe the two. If you're in fraternities, sororities, those can be on here as well. Definitely put them on here. A lot of times employers are looking for leadership. What if you were the president of the ASU Recycling Club? That would look pretty impressive. What if you were, you brought in a poet to come and talk about whatever it might be. So think about putting those things on here. There are over 1,000 student clubs and organizations, so don't be afraid to join one because it really does make a difference on your resume. I would say avoid what might be perceived as controversial or unless you know your audience. So here's a very bland example. I'm a member of the Sierra Club. Does everybody know what the Sierra Club is? Okay, they promote clean air, clean water, save the environment. Who doesn't want that, really? I mean, is there anybody in here that likes dirty water and filthy air? But I don't have it on my resume. Why? Because I assess who my audience is every time I apply for a job. I have put it on certain times. It depends on the job. So, you know, things like, I mean, there's just been another school shooting. If you're a member of the National Rifle Association, maybe that's not a good thing to put on there unless you're applying to be a lobbyist for the NRA. Do you see what I'm saying? Think about what will be the perception, who is reading this, because you may have a 50-50 chance of having it not looked at simply because you put something on there.
Would
Yes.
this involve like religious community involvement?
It could be, you know, again, who's your audience? It might get yeah. Now, I see lots of resumes where people have references to their religious affiliation, and I always say, you know, it can be okay. It could be, you know, it just depends. Who is your audience? I always say start off with, if you're not sure, you have a 50-50 chance of that going the wrong way. Make sense? Any other questions about community involvement? Okay, then the next thing I think you need on here are any skills and certifications. And you'll see on this resume, you see Word, Excel, Outlook, PowerPoint. 90% of the jobs I look at ask for those things. And they ask for them specifically this way. So if we know that scanning equipment might be looking for these keywords, then put that on your resume all the time. It's not necessarily a given that everybody who graduates from college can do these things. I know a lot of college students that can't do Excel. So think about putting on, and remember this too, anything on here can be subject to demo. So I see a lot of students that put fluent in Spanish on their resumes, and I happen to speak Spanish. I was a Spanish major. So anytime I see that, I'll start speaking in Spanish to the students, and they'll say, well, I took 4 semesters. 4 semesters is not fluent in Spanish. So make sure if you're going to put something on your resume that you can really demonstrate it. We work a lot with engineers. We work with all majors, but engineers have to often, even in phone interviews, they'll be simultaneously on computers and they'll say, okay, write some code in C++ to do this. If it's on your resume, it's subject to demonstration. So think carefully about the things that you're going to put on there. And the other thing is, do add all your social media skills. They are highly marketable skills. Probably 5 years ago, you would never heard of a social media job. And now you can be the social media director of Cox Communication or Coca-Cola or wherever it might be. It's kind of interesting. So spending all that time on Facebook does have a value, right? Who knew? But remember, if you put it on there, you know, like when Twitter started, I opened a Twitter account because I thought I have to know what is. I've looked at it maybe twice in my life. I don't even remember what my password is to get there. So think about if you have it on here, it's subject to demonstration or saying, show me the last time you tweeted. You can now, I think it is Twitter or is it Instagram? You can now get, if you can demonstrate that you have a lot of followers, companies are willing to give you, you know, a soda or some kind of a product because you can talk about it with your followers. So marketable skill, put that on there. Also, any certifications. If you, now I know bartenders have to have that whatever bar safety or, you know, to make sure you're not over serving. Or if you wanted to go into education, if you have a fingerprint clearance card, if you have first aid, those are things that you need to have on there. So make sure you put those on there. Anybody have some questions about skills or certifications, like what to put on? Okay, that's the final thing on the resume. The most important thing is after you craft this resume, have someone else review it. We have in our office, we trained career peer advisors. You can walk in for a half-hour appointment. They can go through it. We have a resume Dropbox. They're also reviewing those. They don't change the resume. They add comments to the resumes because You never know. Here's the most common misspelled word I see on resume. So this is what I see all the time. People are mangers. Now, manger is a word, but what did they mean? Manager. So, oh, here's the other one. These are I see these all the time, all the time. People say they provide customer service. Well, no, they don't. They provide customer service. So think about and those are two words that never get picked up by any spell check. So make sure you have somebody else review your resume. How long should your resume be? One page, absolutely. New college grads, 1 page. When you get to have a long work history like me, you get 2 pages. My husband actually was a hiring manager for a long time, and he would say when new college grads, because they bring a lot of new college grads into Intel, any student that would turn in a 2-page resume, they would accept it, but they never looked at the second page. There's no way new college grads can do that much stuff. So think about it. It gets tedious if somebody has a 6-page resume. Would you read it? No. Your resume is going to be looked at for like 10 to 30 seconds. That's it. So you don't have time to do those 3 or 4 pages. So definitely have somebody else review it, and definitely have somebody call the number on your phone, on your resume, just because, like I said, I did that myself. It's just a word to the wise. So after that, then you also need another document, and you will see this in your handout. You need a cover letter. And a cover letter, anytime you can apply for a job and have a cover letter along with your resume, you are 10 steps ahead of the game, because it gives you the opportunity to sell yourself even further and completely tailor that to that person that you're applying for and the job you're applying for. So here's the items that you need I thought we had all of them. Okay, so the first thing that you want to do is put the person's name, try to address them. I've been a job applicant. I know you could spend 3 weeks trying to figure out who you're sending this to. If you don't know who you're sending it to, you can say, Dear Human Resources Professional, Dear Hiring Manager, Dear Search Committee, if it's a university. Never, ever use to whom it may concern. That's because it won't concern anybody. Or don't use Dear Sir, Madam. Honestly, in our office, we see that people are applying for jobs to be career advisors, and we're seeing that. And it's like, wow, you probably shouldn't be applying for this job if you don't get that, right? So I understand that you may not be able to find the person's name. If you can, that's great. If not, then Dear Human Resources Professional, Dear Hiring Manager. And then you're really going to have 4 paragraphs, maybe 5. The first one always says what you're applying for, and then kind of give them a little hint of, here's why I think I'm qualified. The next paragraph or the next 2 paragraphs would talk directly about what they are looking for, not what you have. As an example, I told you I speak Spanish. When I applied at ASU, I didn't say, and I speak Spanish, and I used it for 7 years as a human resources manager, because they don't care. They don't want me to, they don't care if I speak Spanish. So I talked about all the work I did with students and advising and helping people find jobs. That's what they wanted to know. So you're going to talk about things that it's really easy. All you have to do is look at they'll say required, must have this, 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 and this. Guess what you're going to talk about? They've already written the outline for your cover letter for you. So 2 paragraphs, no more than that. Then the 3rd paragraph should ask for the interview. And then the 4th paragraph, you should say thank you. Remember, they may be looking at 50 to 80 to 100 to 1,000 applications for one job. Thank them for their time, because ultimately a human does look at this, and that can show common courtesy, and it can really help you in terms of the job search. So have somebody else look at this too. I always say have people look. And one of the things that will happen, and this has happened to me, I was actually trying to find an agent to sell a book, So I would get the agents' names and I would put that on here, and then I would send one, and then I would take that person's name off. Well, a couple times I forgot to take that off, and I sent, like, I would send it to Stephanie, only I was supposed to be somebody named Philip. Bad. So be careful. If you're gonna, a lot of times you apply for similar types of jobs, or you're applying for a lot of jobs, make sure you don't do that mistake. Always carefully read what you're sending out. It happens all the time, so don't let that happen. These really, if you can't send a cover letter, you can't send a cover letter, but every time you can, this will help you a lot. And it also showcases your writing skills, and your English majors. You should be amazing writers. Is anybody doing NaNoWriMo, by the way? Do you know what NaNoWriMo is? Are you doing it? No, I just signed up for it, so we'll see if I do it. Writing a novel in a month, 50,000 words, starting November 1st. Okay, the last thing on your resume, the last thing, we call this the job search toolkit. You would never staple it together and it wouldn't be printed back to back. But remember, I'm a member of the Sierra Club, so I like to save paper. So your reference sheet, notice what you have up here. It will be the same as on your resume. So you start creating this brand of you that every single document the employer looks at all looks exactly the same. It looks cohesive, it becomes a brand. And you should have 3 to 5 references. If they ask for 3, definitely give them 3, but you can, and the most important thing is, who should you be asking for references? Your neighbor, your roommate? Not so much. Employers want to talk to professors, they want to talk to supervisors, they want to talk to people that can say, do you show up? Do you do the work? Are you a good team member? What are your strengths? Would you hire this person again? So ask people that can really talk about that. And I mean, ask permission. Don't just put them on your reference sheet saying, oh, well, they'll give me a good reference. And what if they're caught off guard, but with a phone call? You don't want that to happen. So make sure that you ask permission to use them. And then when you start looking for a job, you want to make sure you're telling them, I'm now applying, or you can even say, I've had 3 interviews, you may be getting a call. Let them know, because that will kind of prepare them to be thinking about you. I always say send them your resume as well. Students have used me as a reference and I get a phone call, and we see thousands of students. So I'm sometimes at a loss when they say, well, so-and-so put you as a reference, and I'll rack my brain thinking, oh. Or I actually go in, I save a lot of student resumes, and I hopefully have that one so I can talk about who that person is. So make sure you do that. And then finally, at the end, when you've gotten a job, let them know. Let them know that you actually got the job, and thank them for their help, because they may have helped. And another word to the wise, this 3 to 5 references, put the very best one at the top, because busy human resources people, I used to be one. If I called the first one and they said, oh, she's amazing, she's wonderful, best employee we've ever had, I didn't call the rest of the references because I didn't have time. So I'm not the only employer that does that, I'm sure. There's some that probably call them all, but I didn't, because I didn't have time. So make sure you put that, because people read from top to bottom, make sure the best one's up at the top. So in summary, you will need all 3 of these documents, and it will be your cover letter, your resume, and your reference sheet. And make sure you have someone else look at them, because you want to make sure they're perfect. Don't give an employer an opportunity to say, oh, they misspelled this, they're out. Because it can be that, when you've got that many applications, that can be a reason. Employers are looking for the 3 or 4 that match perfectly. So be that person. And I just hope that you'll come to our office and have a chance to get to know us, and we can help you in either your internship or your job search. So we always say the sooner you start, the further you'll go. Is that from Dr. Seuss? I don't know. Somebody else put that under. So thank you, and I'll take some questions now if anybody has any. Yes?
Would you put a reference page if you're applying to an internship?
Good question. Usually you do not send the references unless requested. Many employers will just say, send a cover letter and a resume. Some may say, send a writing sample. Some may say, send a salary history. A lot of times they'll ask you to bring your reference sheet with you when you go to the interview. So unless it's specifically asked for, usually when you're applying for a job, it would just be a cover letter and a resume. But you want to have the reference sheet at the ready so that if it's asked for, you've already got it. And here's what happens sometimes too. This happened to me. On my reference sheet, I taught Spanish at one point in time. It was at a charter school. The principal sold the school. It no longer, so she's no longer there. The school's no longer there, but she really was. So I always put her name and then I say former principal because that's what she was. And I still list the name of the school because that's really where it was. That's where the work experience was. So sometimes things like that happen too. So keep your references up to date. Great question. Anyone else? No? Well, craft some beautiful resumes and let us take a look at them in our office. And thank you so much.
Thank you.